What role does the brain play in chronic pain patterns? And is neural retraining a productive approach for pain reduction and elimination? I'm your host, Madeleine Lowry, and today we are going to be diving into this topic. I know so many of you live with pain every single day. Chronic pain can be confusing, exhausting, and discouraging, especially when you've tried medications, therapies, supplements, body work, lifestyle changes, and nothing seems to fully resolve it. And if that sounds familiar, please know that you are not alone and that your pain is absolutely real. But what if there's a missing piece in how we understand chronic pain? What if part of the pain experience is shaped, not consciously but subconsciously, by emotional patterns, old stress responses, or unresolved memories the body is still carrying? This is where neural retraining becomes very powerful. And today I invited my former client and now fellow practitioner, Susan, to explore this with me. Together we'll talk about how the mind interprets pain, why pain can persist long after an injury has healed, and how subconscious emotional patterns can amplify or maintain physical pain in surprising ways. You will hear real stories from our work, from frozen shoulder to lower back pain to debilitating foot pain, and how when the subconscious patterns behind the symptoms were addressed, the pain began to shift, sometimes dramatically. If you've been living with chronic pain and wondering why nothing has fully helped, or if you are simply curious about the mind-body connection and want to understand your symptoms more deeply, this episode is for you. All right, let's begin. Welcome, Susan. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Madeleine. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, so today we wanted to talk about pain and pain patterns, which is a really big topic. I think that there are a lot of people out there that are experiencing pain patterns, whether that's joint pain, migraines, fibromyalgia, abdominal pain, right? So many kinds of pain patterns out there that would benefit from maybe a different approach to their pain, other than medications or physical therapy, supplements, or other alternative therapies, all of which are valuable, all of which have a place. But when you've tried all these things and your pain isn't really responding, then I think it's worthy of consideration, right, to think about a different approach.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And as neural retraining specialists, we see pain differently, wouldn't you say?
Yes, we do, because we believe that ultimately our mind runs our body, right? And so with that perspective, working with the mind is really going to get to the root cause.
Yes. And I want to make sure that we say that your pain is real. For those of you listening to this conversation, we are not saying that your pain is all in your head, but rather there are emotional and mental factors that should be considered in relation to your pain that may be transformative, for that pain pattern that you're experiencing. That back pain, that shoulder pain, those migraine headaches. Yes.
Absolutely.
And I've seen it over and over again with so many clients that I think it's really important for people to understand that there is another way to address those pain patterns. And it has to do with the mind, because every sensation of pain is an interpretation by the brain.
Yes. And that's why some people, we say, have a higher pain tolerance than others, right?
Yes. And we can see this in the extreme, right? Because, we've all heard stories about people that have been in very difficult situations, challenging situations, like in a car accident or that have been bitten by a shark, and they feel no pain until their lives are out of danger. So there is an example of where the mind can decide that feeling pain is not really in your best interest right now, and it can turn it off. And also, we have the experience of people who have ghost pains, where a finger or a limb isn't there anymore, and yet they are still feeling pain in these appendages that aren't physically present. And there is an example of where the mind can create pain, where there is no nerve ending sending a signal. And so the mind can create, and it can also inhibit pain sensations. So those are like two extremes, right? But for the everyday person that's experiencing chronic episodes of pain, exploring the mental and emotional patterns that relate to that can be very productive.
Yeah. Those are two great examples too of, like you said, how our mind can determine, our brain can determine if it's a good time to experience pain. It can turn it on and off.
Absolutely. Yes. For many people who come to see me, for example, wanting to work on their pain pattern, they don't know what these mental and emotional factors are, and they don't have to know, because this is what the session is about, right? This is what the whole neural retraining session is about. It's about putting the person into a receptive place, that meditative state in which we, conduct our sessions, and allowing them, prompting them, and allowing them to discover the connections, the subconscious associations that are involved. I think people that come to work with us often have insights, right? They have little discoveries that they make in the course of a session that they may not have understood before. These associations are new to them. Sometimes, people will say, "I've literally never had this thought before." Things are coming up for them in the session that provide a lot of illuminating information about what it is that their subconscious mind has been holding on to that is driving the pain pattern. Do you have
Yeah.
examples of this in your work, Susan?
Well, I have two actually. One was a client came to me and she had been dealing with frozen shoulder, and she was very aware. She's done a lot of mind body work, and so she knew it traced back to this one incident a few years ago, where she came upon a very startling and frightening situation that she saw. And ever since then, she had had this issue with her shoulder, and she'd had anxiety and kind of PTSD from that event, that traumatic event that she witnessed. And she had done lots of different other kinds of modalities, and they had helped, but not permanently, so to speak, right? And so we worked on that memory, and we only worked on it once, which was pretty amazing to me. And her shoulder was better. It's not been frozen since then. She was getting to the point where she didn't call it panic attacks, but she was hyperventilating a lot, having a lot of anxiety symptoms, and that went away. So it really, really improved her life just working on that one memory. The pain obviously is what she came for, but then it just had this beautiful ripple effect on her whole life. And then I had another client come to me. She was an older woman. She appeared to be very fit, trim, and active. And we did 3 sessions total. So we did the intro session, we did a second session on just some food related body image things. And then the third session, she came to me and she also had done a lot of this kind of, mind body work. And she said she wanted to work on safety, feeling safe. And I said, okay, that's a great thing to work on. So we worked on that, but she had also discussed a relationship strain that she was having with her daughter. And this was weighing on her very heavily. And in the beginning of our session, when we do the little chit chat and find out what we're going to work on, the very first thing she said to me was, "I'm so sorry, but my back is throbbing and I can barely move." And I said, "Well, that's okay." So she laid down on a bed for her session. And again, this is over Zoom, right? So she's on her bed and we did the session. We addressed safety. We addressed her relationship strain. And I did ask her to rate her pain in her back at the beginning just to get an idea. And she said it's about an 8 or 9 out of 10. And by the end of the session, well, let me back up. She did say that she wanted me to, you might want to work on this pain, Susan. You might want to, like she really wanted me to somehow address this physical pain directly. And I said, well, let's just get started and let's address the safety and the relationship issue. So we did that. And by the end of the session, without addressing the pain directly, she was stunned. She said, I can't believe it. She was just completely gobsmacked. She said, I can move. My pain is down to like a 2 or 3. You didn't even talk about my back. And so that was such an exciting example, even, for me as a practitioner, to see that happen within an hour, that she couldn't move. And now she's like, wow, it's only like a 2 or 3. I can move. And so that was really amazing. So that shows, right, that back pain was related to either her feeling of safety or her relationship strain with her daughter. And so that was just an amazing example. And it was just an honor to witness that and to see her improve so much in such a short time. And again, not everybody does it in such a short time, but it is possible. Things do shift.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note that sometimes the pain pattern shifts in the session, and that shift might only hold for a few hours or a few days. And that doesn't mean that the session didn't work, right? Because we've alleviated something that was contributing to that pain pattern. However, you leave the session, you go back into your life, you're being triggered again by other things, right? Because we worked on certain triggers, but not like all the triggers in your life. And so you may notice that over time, the benefit of that session is less and less noticeable, but it is an opportunity for you to observe, what it is in your life that is causing you strain or stress or triggering you, and to bring that to the next session so that we can work on more of the associations and the triggers for that pain pattern.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this makes me think of a funny, well, maybe not so funny story about one of our colleagues. I don't know if you know this story, but we have a colleague, another neural retraining specialist named Dr. Ed. He's a chiropractor, and he was having intense back pain and could not heal himself. His chiropractor friends couldn't help him, tried everything, decided to engage in a map session with another practitioner. And they just picked something that was causing him stress in his life. The pain had been so bad, he was on the point of scheduling surgery. And after they did this map session, he was amazed because he stood up out of his chair and the back pain was gone.
Wow.
Bend down, touch his toes, the back pain was gone. He was stunned. And that's a chiropractor, right? So someone who knows a lot about back pain and structural pain. And yet, he was shown how much the mind has to do with pain patterns.
Yeah.
So one of my clients recently, I just as you were telling your stories, I was thinking back to some sessions I had last week, and I have a client who came to see me because she has tremendous foot pain, really sore, painful, stiff feet all day long. It's worse when she first wakes up. It's worse when she has to bend over, when she has to go upstairs, things like that. So there are certain things that make it worse. And so she had decided to work on that in our session. And this is maybe our 5th session together. But she had previously done a session with me about her lower back pain, and that had improved so much that she was willing to consider, right? Like as our clients experience benefits where they maybe didn't have very high expectations that they would see benefits, then they're willing to take on another pain pattern to work with. So this time we worked with her feet. And it was so interesting because as we identified the associations and the emotions, things that had happened to her in her life, when I asked her, how long has this been going on and when did this start? And when we talk about what had been happening in her life, we realized that there were a lot of associations to burdens of responsibility that she had taken on. In particular, she was a caregiver for both of her parents.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge, huge responsibility she was bearing alone. And especially for someone who has, shall we say, perfectionistic tendencies, right? These things can compound each other and create the conditions, right? It kind of, I like to say it sets the stage for
Mhm.
pain patterns. And so as we started to explore this and resolve it in a 90-minute session format, her feet were feeling better and better and better. And by the end, she was saying, this is like foot pain she's had for years, right? Unrelenting foot pain she's had for years. By the end of the session, she said, my feet. And she's looking at me with this strange, like, I can't believe I'm saying this look. She said, my feet feel good. No
Wow.
pain, zero. It's just amazing what we can find and discover in a session. And it doesn't require, that the client come to us knowing what the issues are, right? Because we're going to uncover that. That's what the session is for. As long as you're open to the process, we're going to be uncovering that. And it's so, I think, eye-opening for people to realize, oh, yes, I've been holding on to this. Oh, yes, I've been feeling guilt, shame. I've been blaming myself. I've been feeling overly responsible. I've been feeling hypervigilant. I've been feeling, whatever that is for them, right? They just realize they've been carrying this sort of mental and emotional burden. And when we give their subconscious mind permission to let it go, things can change, including pain patterns. And it's
Yeah.
really a wonderful feeling to be facilitating a session and seeing that happen right in front of you, right?
Oh, I love it. It's amazing. It's amazing. And like you said, and we both said, sometimes clients come to us and they know like this is exactly when the pain started because of this trauma or I saw this happen or whatever it is. Some people have, like you said, have insights during the session. And I would say that most do, right? But I don't want people to like people that are listening to feel like, oh no, there's pressure, like I have to figure it out because they don't. That's, I guess, the hardest part for people that are in their head a lot, and that includes me when I started map sessions. Like, do I have to figure this out? And no, you don't have to figure it out. You just have to be an observer of whatever is happening in your mind. And I know that might sound a little strange, but it's really quite amazing how it works. And your mind will show you what you need to know.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say like anyone can do this. Anyone can
Yep.
do this because it requires what it requires from the client is very basic, right? Are you able to focus on something? For example, the sensation that you're feeling in your body right now. Are you able to close your eyes, breathe slowly, deeply, and gently, and just be receptive, just hear, the instructions that we're offering to your subconscious mind. You don't have to understand what those instructions are, but just being present and noticing what comes up in your mind, much like meditation. When you're meditating, often we are told to focus on our breath, feeling of the breath going in and out. Well, this is basically the same thing. It's just with a slight change in the area of focus. You are focusing on your pain sensation and you're noticing what comes up. A thought may come up for you, or another sensation, or an emotion, or a memory, a word. You may notice, right, things coming up in your mind as you are sitting there in a pretty relaxed state.
Mhm.
And that is the opportunity, right? That's the opportunity to see that, to recognize it, to wonder about it, to engage with it. Maybe like, oh, yes, I remember, this happening, or I remember feeling that way when I was younger, or I remember something. And in that way, the subconscious mind is sort of revealing itself. And it's really, really quite easy and rewarding, I would say. I think most of my clients look forward to their sessions. Wouldn't you say so?
Definitely, definitely. And I would just add on to that, we talk about just being the observer of what's ever coming up in your mind. I guess the only thing a client needs to, like a new client especially, needs to be able to do is to be honest with themselves, right? They don't need to tell us all their dark, dirty secrets or past, but they do need to be honest with themselves and be vulnerable within their own mind and to be open to looking at things perhaps in a new way. And then the only other thing I would say too is yeah, this works for people. You have to be, you can be skeptical, right? As a first timer, you can be skeptical, but you still need, with that skepticism, you still need to be open to that. Well, this might work, right? And that's kind of where I was when I first came to you all those years ago. And I was very skeptical, but I was wanting it to work and hoping it would work. I just want people to know that they can be skeptical. It's okay to have questions. We're happy to answer any questions, before we start the session or after the session. And then again, the client has to be willing to be vulnerable with themselves and trust the process and to be honest with themselves.
Yeah, those are good tips, I would say. And I would even say you don't even have to be at the level of hoping it will work. You just have to be at the level of like, let's see.
Yeah.
See if this can work, right? Let's see what could happen.
Yes.
It's not a huge investment in time. Sessions are 60 minutes or 90 minutes, right? It's not a huge investment in time, but it's an opportunity to try something new, to take a different approach and just see, could this work? And I think most people know if this method is for them, usually within 3 sessions.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It's a great way to address pain that's not from, a traumatic accident or something, right? It's just interesting. It's interesting that, doctors can tell you a lot of things and we believe those things. And then we believe that we're going to live with this pain or whatever it is for the rest of our lives. And there might be another way.
Yeah, that's true. And I want to say about the traumatic injury. I mean, even a traumatic injury, when that injury has healed and the pain continues.
Yes.
So I think what you're trying to say is we're talking about chronic pain patterns here, not acute pain patterns here, right? If you just broke your leg, it's going to hurt. We're not talking about that. We're talking about chronic pain patterns that haven't responded to other kinds of treatments or therapies, or just chronic pain patterns. If you're interested in exploring what the emotional and mental connections might be to see if that might diminish or resolve your pain, I think it's very worth the small investment in time, to try it.
Yes.
Working with mind. It's amazing.
It is.
Mind is so powerful.
Yes.
And you and I see this every day, right, Susan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it never ceases to amaze me, even though I know this, right? But to see it happening in real time with my clients, honestly, it's really an honor and a privilege to watch this happen because it blesses me to see my clients improve their mental, emotional, physical life, right? And yeah, it's a huge honor.
Well, thank you for joining me for this podcast episode today, Susan. I've so enjoyed hearing your stories, your insights, and I think there's a lot of positive information that people can gain from our conversations.
Thank you for having me, Madeleine.
If this episode was helpful to you, please follow the podcast, rate it, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. If you'd like to learn more about neural retraining for chronic pain symptoms, please schedule a free consultation with me by visiting tcneuralretraining.com. Thanks for listening, and remember, when you shift your subconscious patterns, you open the door for healing. Content of this podcast, copyright 2025 by Twin Cities Neural Retraining. Music by Barbara Ben.